Welcome to our very first edition of Readership Reflection. This year we're going to look at things differently. We're going to look at genres of writing. In this edition of Readership Reflection, join us as we talk about historical fiction. Come and have a look at all the books that we've come across, books that talk about history, that come from a fictional perspective, books that inspire children to want to know more about history. Come and find out about this edition of Readership, very first Readership Reflection of the year. So welcome to another edition of Readership Reflection 2022.
Hi everyone, my name is Farida from the Book of Cafe.
Olome from Esopip Africa.
Temiloluwa Adeshina from Readland. Excited to be here.
Adesola Alli from Kids Literary Circle. Great to be here.
My name is Sade Fadipe and I am a children's author. There was a book that I saw with one of you that I think I'm just going to call to the fore once and for all because I'm so fascinated by this title. The historical name is Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela.
The question is this historical fact or is it historical fiction? Let's find out about this book.
Here's the book I have. Mr. Hare meets Mr. Mandela. Mandela is a historical figure, but Mr. Hare is completely fictional, right? So I think this would qualify in some way as historical fiction. I found it really amusing. So did my children. It's quite funny. And look, I think there's a lesson to learn as well. A very important lesson, which is the importance of reading. I'd say that's the underlying message in this book. The story in summary is about Mr. Hare who finds some money, and on the front of the money is Nelson Mandela's face, and at the back of it are faces of other animals. And so he thinks to himself that Mr. Mandela has lost something and he needs to return it. So he calls a meeting amongst the other animals and lets them know he's going to return it. But they tell him that he can't be successful because he can't read. But, I guess arrogantly, he decides, I'm going to return this money anyway. And along the way, interesting things happen to him. The fact that he cannot read actually does put him at a disadvantage in the city, though he ends up being successful. But you would imagine how much more successful he could have been on this journey if he could have actually read signs and other things along the way. So it was, and he meets Nelson Mandela at the end of the book and returns the money. Well, returns part of the money, which.
So my question is there, so if I didn't know about Nelson Mandela, and if you didn't know about Nelson Mandela, is there any information within the book that tells us that Nelson Mandela is a historical figure?
It just tells you, that he is the president of South Africa at the time.
Okay. Does the book give us that information, or is it we have to assume, the author assumes that we would all know that Nelson Mandela used to be the president of South Africa?
I think the author assumes we would all know, but the character of Nelson Mandela in the book is as the president,
Okay.
So
okay. Okay. So the character in the book is the president.
Yes. So
that works, doesn't it?
You said?
I said that works. That's perfect.
Yes. And you would know he's an important figure because the news the news team comes, photographers come to watch this hair, hand over the money to Nelson Mandela. So the activity makes the news, like what happens makes the news over there. So
that sounds like an interesting read. I want a copy of that. Sounds like a very interesting read. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, any other questions? Does anyone else have anything to say?
It sounds fascinating. I'm actually, it has piqued my interest. Who's the author? Is he an African? Is it, who's he by?
Chris Van Wyk.
Retail price.
You said retail price. The retail price is in Rand, so I don't know.
This is probably published in South Africa then.
Yes. And I think this author has written the biography. A Long Walk to Freedom. He writes children. There's a children's version of it. So he's the author.
I particularly like the size of the book. It looks as if it's as huge as the exotic elephant. It looks as if it's round about that size. Really lovely. Thank you for bringing that book into the room.
Wangari Maathai is what I have. It may not be totally historical fiction like Ogum went on, but it's talking about the life of a woman I respect in history that just talks about her her lifestyle as a child that translates to who she became as an adult. And I think I delved more on that part because I wanted children to relate, or I wanted children, or as well as parents, they could relate to when they see some personality traits in their children and understand that this is their DNA that makes up who they are in the future. The book particularly points to how a childhood was, how she now became who she is. I think that's just a good part for me that I picked there. Wangari is a child that doesn't like to play when other girls are playing. She's a girl that just likes to sit and admire the trees around her. She's a girl that they beg to come leave the shade of the trees. They call them like the red tulip trees. The trees you find in Kenya, because that's where the location or where it took place. She was very odd. So I was kind of fascinated by that kind of childhood. So when you see your child, that the child just likes to feel surroundings, there's something about that child. So eventually you get to read about her life. But unfortunately, this girl that loved sitting in the shadow of green trees, looking at nature, talking to birds, was not allowed to go to school, which is a sad part of her life. But she had a brother called Kukuyu who would come back after school and teach her 1 to 10. He would say 1 to 10 after me. Say 2 to 5. Say these words. Because she had a father who didn't believe a girl should be sent to school. So she had to fight for her right. And her brother was able to convince their dad, send her to school. You never know what she would become. And so they had to exchange places. When Wangari goes to school, the brother helps the mom in the kitchen and in the market. So finally, she started school very late. I think 12 years old. But they found out that she was brilliant. Imagine not being allowed to go to school in the early part of until you were 12. And you were still the most brilliant one in class. So it has more fiction, it has lots of fiction, and then still the rest is history.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you have the book with you? Do you have it?
Oh, so I do.
Just a second. Just put it on the spotlight.
Oh, let's see how she does in events. Okay. Communal way of living in Kenya. This is her brother. Sorry, it's a silhouette reading to her after school. So we have.
And who was it written by? Who was it written by?
Oh, okay, sorry. It's written by Temiloluwa Adeshina, illustrated by Francis Adeshina.
Now that's a surprise. That is a surprise. Oh my gosh. You love that on us. That's awesome. That's awesome. You wrote it. Amazing. Well, guess what? We all need copies now, don't we? We all have to get a copy of that one. Thank you. So you are a historical fiction writer. And we didn't know. Look at that.
But I've learned something new here. I like that. I like the part of when I like the rapture of a historical figure between the past and maybe the present, mixing together, and then the child brings out his lessons, and we all get to enjoy it. So I like that part. I've never explored that part. I should try it.
I like the fact that you've just shared a book with us, and I asked who the author was, and I had no idea the author was in the room.
Oh, okay.
Congratulations! Thank you so much. I've got to get a copy. Let's be a blessing to Temiloluwa for that book. Thank you so much for doing that on the historical fiction, historical figure. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, who's next?
Thank you.
Who's next?
I'll be talking about this book. Okay, it's Idea of the Benin Kingdom. It's historical fiction because the story talks about Idea, her childhood, and nobody really knows how her childhood was because it was in the 1800s. But the story just, tells us, they just imagine the story of how she would actually have, how her childhood would actually have been, and how she emerged as the first queen of Benin Kingdom, and how she helped her son, get to the throne. And it's really a fascinating story, to encourage girls, especially, reading the book, get to learn so many qualities. She wasn't encouraged to. Her parents wanted her to dance because that was what they were doing back then. So they encouraged her to go and dance. And she was a really good dancer. But she didn't only want to dance, she wanted to be a warrior. She has a lot of beautiful pictures. And it also has some history. So if you don't know anything about Queen Idea, before you pick up the story, you can get to learn about her, see some statues that depict her, and then there's also a map that tells us about Benin, because it's Benin Kingdom. So it shows all of that. So even there were many things that I didn't know before I read the book, and I really enjoyed reading the book. And children as well, they really enjoyed reading the story. So it's actually a very good book that every school, and I think this book has actually been included in the curriculum in Lagos State schools because it's actually a really great resource. It's really good. It has a lot of rich content, and our children don't know anything about our history, because that's another thing. Schools have just introduced history as another subject, just to get children to go back to the roots. And books like this will help them, to help them to see the stories and remember it, and put some things in context. So yes,
Thank
it's
you.
a very, very interesting story.
And it also has a workbook.
Yes, has activities,
Oh, wow.
coloring, and different things. Yes, it's really good. Very
Fantastic.
rich.
Beautiful. I mean, the cover is beautiful, the inside is beautiful. So is it historical fiction, or is it a history? Is it a history book that is narrated in a child-friendly way? I think
It's actually fiction. It's not
Fantastic.
real life. It's
Fantastic.
fiction.
Fantastic.
So the only thing is that she was the queen, the mother of the first queen mother. So
Okay.
the only thing at the end was it depicted that she was a queen, she was a warrior, she fought in the war, which is
Okay.
exactly what happened in real life, and she was the first queen mother. But all the story, how everything came together, it's all fiction. Nobody really knows what she was as a child.
It's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful. And how much is it?
In Nigeria, I don't know how much it costs. I think 6,000 naira. I'm not sure. Farida, can you?
It's 2.5.
2.5. Okay, so it's actually affordable. Yeah, it's very.
Yeah, very, very affordable. And who's the author?
It's written by Ekiwa. I hope I got the name right.
Ekiwa.
Ekiwa. And she's Ire. Okay, you're from Benin, so you can say the word. And she's actually based in Canada.
Beautiful, beautiful book. Beautiful book. So that's another one for your shelves. Another one for your shelves. Beautiful. Okay. I had to say that I've got the Kunda Kids t-shirt on, and I will be talking about their books in a minute. But let's hear from Farida.
Okay, so mine is Kente for a King. And it's a retelling of a story about how the Ghanaian, that beautiful Ghanaian material called Kente came about, where a man learned how to weave, and then he used black and white cloth to weave for the king, and the king felt it was boring, and he went back to him and said, can't you weave something that is a bit more colorful? And so the man had a dream about how to make better kente, and he found himself in a certain land, and like a very wise man taught him how to make that. A very wise man called the weaver taught him how to make kente that was really colorful, and then he tried it, and he made one and took it to the king as a gift, and the king loved it, and that's how the king adopted kente as his own outfit, and it now became widespread in Ghana.
So who is it written by?
So it was written by it's a retelling. So there's an original story, but this particular one I'm holding was retold by a lady called Kathy Knowles. She's Canadian, but she has lived in Ghana for years. So these are anybody get their illustrators from the books. When it comes to illustrations, they do something with it that I don't see anywhere else.
Let's showcase that. Let's have a look.
So if you don't know what kente looks like, it's a very colorful fabric, very common in Ghana. I talked about him having a dream, and he had a dream about, and in his dream he met this man who taught him. So this is him sleeping. So the main character in the book is a man called Opoku, and I researched that name, and that's the origin of the they are called weavers. People from the Opoku family line are called weavers, and they are from a place in Ghana called Bonawaya. So if you Google that, you find that that's where Kente started from in Ghana. Yeah. Trying to show the pictures. Well, this is where the man was teaching him how to make Kente. Colorful Kente. So I think this is the point where he was presenting the colorful Kente he made to the king, and the king liked it. So I guess that's where the title came from, Kente for a King.
Wow. I think, this is where we kind of think, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had that. Is the king, is it a particular king? Do we know his name? Is it the tribe of the weavers that make it historical?
Yeah, it's the tribe of weavers. So Bonawaya in Ghana is the origin of the tribe of weavers. So I don't think the king is real, because the name that was used is they just started with many years ago in Ashanti Kingdom. So it's not fiction like that.
Beautiful.
For weavers. So Bonawaya in Ghana is the origin of the tribe of weavers. So I don't think the king is real, because the name that was used is they just started with many years ago in Ashanti Kingdom. So it's not fiction like that.
Beautiful books. I've got 6 books. Mansa Musa builds a school, and we know historically about Mansa Musa's involvement in higher education, but they've toned this down, brought it to the level of a child, and so that's so this is how the Kundaki puts their how they brand their books. Shaka Zulu learns to dance. Moremi, I'm going to talk about Moremi only because last week we had a conversation. One of us brought in a factual book about Moremi, and we compared the two. We compared the content of the factual book about Moremi and the fiction version of Moremi. And what I like about these kind of books is they give you, from the very first page, they give you some idea of what makes this historical fiction. So there's a very first bit of information there that tells you about who characters in the past, and then it goes on to present a story. So this was a story about Moremi, who had a friend, and she wasn't as kind as she could be, so she ends up upsetting her friend, but she then goes back to apologize. I like the child friendliness about it. So no child is perfect, but she grew up to become a brave and strong woman in the end. So I love the book. I love the illustrations. I love the simpleness of the language. I think throughout their books there's an element of rhyme, a bit of rhythm, the language, the words are chosen. Moremi and the women of Ile-Ife won the battle against the invaders from Ugo land and held their torches to the sky to mark the historical victory. Today, the statue of Queen Moremi is located in the palace of the Oni of Ife and is the tallest in Nigeria and 4th tallest in Africa. So there's so we've got the facts there. So straight away we know that we know that Moremi is a person of history. And they have the same factual page in all the books before they go on to the actual fiction part of the story. So the big question, what is historical fiction? I think if anyone asked that question today, I think we've done a good job in answering the question.
Yes, we have.
Do we have enough historical fiction books?
No, we don't.
Why would you say we don't? I mean, well, that was very point of fact, we don't.
Yes, because even when I was preparing for this meeting, I was struggling to find something that fits very well into historical fiction. There's history, there's a lot of that coming out nowadays, but in terms of history that has been made into fiction, there's very few. I don't know if I think it's up to 10. In Nigeria, telling Nigerian stories, or Africa, West Africa, I don't think, or that I've read, I don't think I can't even count up to 10.
Wow, interesting. So, are they relevant? Do we need them? Of what significance?
Definitely, because, and I'll say we need them because let's take the Kunda Kids stories, for instance. Since we started stocking those books and children started reading them, we've gotten, you hear children talk about, for instance, Shaka Zulu, and the stories are, even though it's fiction, it helps them remember those characters. The characters in the story are real people, so they have an idea who Shaka Zulu is and where he came from. So that's it's enough history that, at least for that level, which the book is written for, it's age 3 to 6. That's pretty much what they need to know in terms of history, and then later on they can now go into proper history, proper non-fiction, telling the real stories of the lives of these characters. So I think it's, and even if you use it in classrooms as well, it makes history interesting, because it's like telling a story, but the characters are real, just that the story is interesting for children to enjoy.
That's so what that makes me think, why was history stopped in schools in Nigeria in the first place?
I always wondered. Does anybody have the answer?
Maybe because our leaders don't know the essence of history. Maybe because we've been electing the wrong leaders that don't even know that to create a future, you need to start from the past. And you need to know what you did wrong in the past for you to create an amazing future. So it's pathetic that we would think that we can write a future without knowing what wrong leadership or what the wrong path is, so that we can take a good path and take a new path. So maybe we've been electing the wrong leaders in the educational sector, and also in the leadership positions, that they don't even have any right or any say to how do I say? They just say, oh, religion, CRK, IRK, out. You don't. It's not supposed to be in the curriculum anymore. History, you chunk it out. It's not making sense to me. They believe the core subjects, math and English, it's the most important thing. We found out about life that no, the core subjects are not even the most important things in the lives of our children. It's books like this that help with their identities. It's books like this that help them know what is possible about themselves. So they forget how they themselves were tutored, where they are coming from, and they want to decide for the future of these children.
I think what you said is so profound. I mean, think about Wangari's life, think about children learning about this girl who was so conscientious, while other children were playing, she just wanted to, study. She couldn't go to school, but she just had that different persona. She wasn't a playful person. So in a way, these are models. We talk a lot about representation, but when we talk about representation, can you now see it from a completely different level? That, okay, we see ourselves, we see Black people, we see Black children, but we see Black children who grew up to do something significant, you know, and whose names are written down in history. But I want to ask Adeshola, in terms of still on this issue of history and leadership, is it possible that we have avoided history as a subject because there's not much to learn from it? So there's so many past mistakes that we're better off hiding them, sweeping them under the carpet, and, you know, just calling it, what was the subject? It was called something about social studies. It's called social studies, not history. Because I remember growing up and learning about Kosoko, Akintoye, you know, all the others. You know, tell me, what are your thoughts?
I think history was actually on the curriculum a long time, like back in the day.
It was. I can tell you it was.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden somebody just changed it, and there was only, because when I was in school there wasn't history anymore, it was just social studies. And social studies doesn't really give you in-depth, because social studies talks about man and his environment. It's not really in-depth into history, you know. So I think they realized that something was wrong, and they introduced it back now. So I mean, that's something good.
Okay.
So yeah, we're looking forward to, you know, having the children to, and now that we have books like Kunda Kids, I hope this kind of books can find their ways to schools. I know a lot of schools have started using these books to reenact plays and different things. So I mean, the future possibilities are endless.
Yeah. So we need to get onto our history and tap in and make it accessible, like Farida said, from a young age, before we introduce them to the history topics, you know, where they start to learn about timelines and dates and, you know, what happened in that war. Because a lot of history is really, it's about war and invading and...
Sorry to cut you off, because I didn't want to forget. So, I mean, when the Kunda Kids series came out, I didn't even know so many of the characters, that they're bringing out. You know, who knew Mansa Musa was the richest man? I didn't do any. It was when I saw the book, I started digging to even find out that he was even richer than all the people they are calling the richest people in the world now. Yeah. Mansa Musa was richer than all of them. Yeah. How many of us knew that? You know, so I'm really pleased with where we are going, and I hope we'll have more books like this in the future for the children.
Great. I think it's been an amazing topic. And so what we all need to go and do now is just look for them. You know, do we have more fictional books, historical fictional books that we haven't yet identified as historical fictions? Or do we need to start creating more historical fiction books? Because where there's a gap, the gap needs to be filled. And this is one of the reasons why in Readership Reflections, we're being very specific about the genre of writing. There's so much that we can do, It'd be interesting if we had all those books out to see, you know, if we start them and say, look, what are the genres that we're writing in? You know, where are we excelling? Where are the deficiencies?
Where do we need more books?
And how can we start to fill the gaps? You know, so it's one thing for somebody to say, oh, I've written a book, but it's another thing to say, I am filling the gap within this genre of writing. And this is where you come in. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. What you just mentioned, I mean, there's actually, what you said is actually really true. It's not just about actually going out and saying, oh, I'm going to write a book for children's book. It's actually looking for where there's a problem and then trying to solve that problem. And I think that one of the genres that we're starting to see a lot more books in is bilingual books written in different languages or written in 2 different languages. I mean, we're getting to see several of those books. We still have a lot of work to do, and I actually agree with you. It's not just about creating content for children's book, but knowing where we have a gap and creating more books like that can solve problems, not just have, okay, this book, there are already several of these genres, and then you're creating a book, same with that, it's not going to add any value. It will add value, but it would have had more impact if it was sending a very important message across to children. So I agree with you.
Thank you so much. I think it's been an interesting topic. History is always going to be on our minds. We always want to know what our ancestors did, why we're where we are at the moment, where we're heading for. So we can't erase history, but even better when we have beautiful books that are historical, but also have elements of fiction that introduce children gently into the topics. One of the things that happened when my kids started learning history, because, obviously they, started off with social studies because we were out there for a bit. And getting here, there was a particular program that they had to watch after being taught history in school. It was called Horrible Histories. And the fact that history could be gory, history could be full of, evil, it could be full of, people killing each other, people not being kind to each other, but they still have to learn about it because it's history. I remember when I started teaching, the first thing that I noticed is anytime we started with a primary resource. Anytime I talked about an artifact, I would need to bring the contemporary article item as well. So, for instance, think about the old irons that we used to use. We used to put coal inside of them to iron. I'm not sure you knew about those ones. And we'll put them next to an electrical iron, and we'll talk about the old and the new. So history always has to be relevant now, in touching our lives now, so also learning from the past. Yes, let's encourage people that write historical fiction to carry on doing a good job. Let's tell them how fantastic their books are, how amazing their work is, and let's keep searching for more books. So once again, thank you so much. We've had a fantastic time, I hope. And it's been amazing. Any last words? And then we can round up. Yes. Temiloluwa, last words?
Keep reading and keep buying books. And don't forget to buy historical fiction books for your children. That's the way to the future.
Can you show me that book again, please? Your book, Oh, amazing. Oh.
Okay, let's do a bookshelf here. Everybody hold their book covers.
Thank you, everybody. That's beautiful.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us, Ms. Fadipe. Awesome
Thank you.
time. Keep reading.
Keep reading.
Everyone.
Keep reading.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.